national parks looking toward the future.
We have children, we've grown up here, we plant corn, we depend on the water.
The Havasupai tribe lacing up and running in hopes of preserving a future for the next generation, plus stopping thieves.
It's ironic that we set aside great places like Saguaro National Park and people think that they can just come take the iconic cactus for which the park is named.
An Arizona National Park turns to technology to try and stop theft. Another is using pictures to monitor their resources and a view for all.
We should be concerned because something is there keeping us from attending in the same numbers as the rest of the population.
The National Park Service wants to diversify and bring more people of color to the great outdoors, what they're doing to get visitors outside. Good evening and welcome to this Cronkite News special, Treasured Land. I'm Tyler Fingert. Tonight we'll take a look at some stories affecting Arizona's national parks. Stories not often covered, but ones that are vitally important to our state. We'll take you to all 3 of Arizona's national parks during the next 30 minutes. But we want to begin near one of the most picturesque places in the Grand Canyon, Havasupai Falls, where the struggle to protect natural resources is running up against the free market. We sent reporter Lillian Donahue to the village of Supai, where those who call Havasupai home are fearful of their future.
The Colorado River is the lifeblood of the Grand Canyon region, but the Havasupai people who call this canyon their home are worried that a uranium mine just miles from the national park could contaminate their water. We exclusively followed activists as they brought the community's concerns from the canyon to the nation's capital.
Havasupai, that means people of the blue-green water. That's who we are. That's our identity right there.
Tucked in the southwest corner of the Grand Canyon is a community of 700 men, women, and children of the Havasupai tribe fighting for their future. As a uranium mine hopes to begin production this year, just 6 miles south from the Grand Canyon National Park.
It's threatening our whole lives down here. You know, we have children, we've grown up here, we plant corn, we depend on the water.
To make their voices heard, a group of Native advocates and leaders took to their traditions, running over 20 miles in and out of the village of Supai in a journey to bring the pleas of the tribe's children from the bottom of the Grand Canyon to our nation's capital.
These children have so much more life to live than any one of us, and it's really their voice that needs to be heard. Granted, we can't take them and put them on an airplane and fly them to the East Coast, so we're doing the next best thing as their leaders, as their representatives, and we're going to deliver their voices to Washington, D.C.
Across this bridge in the Havasupai Creek starts the village of Supai. Out of respect for the Tribal Council's wishes, they have asked us not to film video on their grounds. However, we will take audio and pictures.
Have love, give love, be in love.
After a blessing, the runners meet with elementary school children, collecting letters that voice their concerns for mining impacts on the land, including their water source, the Colorado River.
Dear Mr. President, I'm a student at Havasupai Elementary School and a member of the Havasupai Baja tribe.
In 2012, the Obama administration instituted a 20-year ban on new uranium mining. Now the Trump administration is considering lifting that ban. For companies like Energy Fuels, it makes it easier to continue their plan to collect more than 2 million pounds of uranium from the Canyon mine.
Contamination from the mining has the potential to impact rivers and water sources downstream.
A spokesperson for the company says the mine is small, yet important for the state.
We estimate that the uranium that comes out of the Canyon mine could provide all of the electricity for the state of Arizona for about a year.
Moore also says he wants to ensure the people of Supai that water contamination will not be an issue.
And if I really thought that there would be any chance that we were going to harm any of that, I simply couldn't work for this company.
But the people who live in these red rock valleys and desert canyons are hesitant to trust mining companies who they say have exploited their land before.
We've been hurt so much from uranium exploration in tribal communities. That legacy is there, and there's nobody coming in to clean up the mess.
For some at the Havasupai Elementary School, the runner's visit empowers them.
It's incredible because I never knew that other people knew that Supai existed, and it's really awesome to have him here, really to come and help us make a bigger voice out of us.
The children have a strong voice, and we let them know that Their ancestors fought very hard for to continue their way of life teaching, and they're going to do the same by writing these letters.
Right.
The runners leave Supai with letters in hand, carrying the hopes of the Havasupai people. It's a message they hope will be heard far from the canyon walls, over the din of the falls, and all the way to the highest office in the land.
The representatives and tribal leaders made their way to Washington, D.C. the next day, delivering dozens of letters to the Trump administration in the hopes that he hears loud and clear the worries of the Havasupai children. Lillian Donahue, Cronkite News.
National parks are created to preserve treasured land, but they're facing an unnatural threat from humans: theft. At Saguaro National Park, people are literally stealing cacti. Yes, you heard that right, stealing cacti with thorns and all. So I went down to Tucson to see what they're doing about it, and I learned theft at national parks is happening around the country. Across the desert landscape, their silhouette is unmistakable. At Saguaro National Park near Tucson, cacti are the main attraction for hikers like Jean Gasho.
You feel like you're so much a part of the desert and just surrounded by these beautiful cactuses.
But the park's namesake cactus is facing a threat from thieves.
It's ironic that we set aside great places like Saguaro National Park and people think that they can just come take the iconic cactus for which the park is named.
Kevin Dahl works with the National Parks Conservation Association. He says being a cactus thief can be lucrative. Each one can fetch $100 or more per foot.
It's absolute robbery and it's absolute criminal activity, and it's for profit. A mature saguaro in a landscape adds something to the value of the home or the business that's for sale or rent.
Across the country, other parks are facing a similar threat. Last year, Death Valley National Park says some visitors walked off with fossil footprints. At Joshua Tree National Park, people have stolen artifacts from old mines, and Fossil Cycad National Monument is a distant memory after the area in South Dakota was literally stolen to extinction.
Some parks deal with people taking rocks, some parks deal with people taking plants and animals. Places like Mount Rushmore, people take the chips that were created when they created the sculptures.
Bill Parker leads the Natural and Cultural Resources team at Petrified Forest National Park. Here, he says, visitors take small pieces of petrified wood.
Some people do still take wood, and we catch them and give them tickets, but whole areas aren't being stripped clean as was thought in the past.
The park turned to photography to test the theory, taking century-old photographs and comparing them to recent photos taken at the same location. And the result, says Parker, if you look at photos from today, most of the artifacts are still intact.
It's a souvenir that people want, but one thing the photography project has showed us is that most people do the right thing.
Some people have even returned stolen wood, and it ends up here, often referred to as the conscience pile. Back in Saguaro National Park, to help make sure theft doesn't happen, the National Park Service has turned to technology, putting tiny, passive trackers in some of their cacti, allowing them to identify ones stolen from the park. Of their roughly 1.9 million saguaro cacti, only 1,000 of them are tagged, the ones close to roads, and the smaller cacti, those most likely to be stolen. The trackers, which are similar to pet microchips, don't actively broadcast a signal, so if a cactus goes missing, Ray O'Neill, Saguaro National Park's chief ranger, says the only way to know if it's from the park is to scan it using a reader, making the trackers more symbol than substance.
Our biggest hope is that it's a deterrent, that people recognize that if they steal cacti from Saguaro National Park, that there's a chance that we're going to be able to identify that cactus came from the park.
While technology is helping to track natural resources, education is still a huge part of keeping parks pristine. And Kevin Dahl wants to make sure that visitors understand the national parks are saved by the people, for the people.
It's a selfish thing when someone does an act of vandalism or steals something from a national park, and it's selfish and it's an act against the American public.
Pieces of American history being taken from some of America's most treasured land. The program at Saguaro National Park cost the Park Service about $3,000. Still ahead on this special edition of Cronkite News, Grand Canyon National Park is known for its views, but the diversity of visitors is a problem the National Park Service is trying to fix.
This is part of the treasure of our country. That's why it's so important. And especially for our multicultural families, we need to make sure that no one is left behind and that everyone can access our parks.
What's being done to diversify national parks?
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Exploring, it's the lifeblood of the mission.
Human beings are a curious bunch.
What are we going to see when we get really close?
Just because an idea is crazy, it's not necessarily wrong.
We were on our way.
You don't get anywhere until you've tested the limits.
That carries an intensity you can't imagine.
You could hear people just, whoa.
Oh my God, absolutely spectacular.
It's a rush. We ask a lot of our heroes.
We are at a remarkable moment.
We're going farther than any exploration ever has.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
National parks are meant for everyone, but increasingly a big percentage of the population is being left out, minorities. Now, a proposed price increase has people worried that recent diversity efforts will be reversed. Thousands of feet above the canyon floor, it's a view you can feel.
No picture could ever do it justice. I mean, it's everything I expected and then some.
Lisa Brokenbrow and Doug Griffin drove 3 straight days from Delaware just to get to the Grand Canyon and a chance to see what more than 6 million visitors saw last year alone.
When you're here, you get the experience more than just a picture. The pictures are beautiful, but being here, you get the full experience and just the wow factor of everything.
The park boasts some of the best views of this beautiful canyon that stretches more than 250 miles across the Southwest, but that view is largely seen by a select group of people. A 2011 National Park Service report shows visitors to parks are overwhelmingly white, with just 1 in 10 visitors being Hispanic and just 7% African American, both underrepresented compared to their populations in the country.
We should be concerned because something is there keeping us from attending in the same numbers as the rest of the population.
Citlatle Reyes works with Latino Outdoors, which is working to get more Latinos outside.
There's definitely maybe a message not getting across that is their park, that they can enjoy it. And that's, I think, the issue we have there.
Diversity is a big issue for the National Park Service, and they're trying to bring more people from more backgrounds to places like this, the Grand Canyon. But they're also trying to increase the diversity of their own staff, hoping that helps to bring more people to the park.
We need to do a lot of stuff within our park as well, and that's everything from making sure our staff looks like the American public, making sure that there's visibility in our publications.
Vanessa Ceja Cervantes is the outreach coordinator at the Grand Canyon. She's working to bring more people to the park as they get ready to celebrate 100 years, Rhea says she hopes some of those people are wearing National Park Service uniforms.
I think we need to see more brown people represented in the National Park Service. We need to see more languages represented, more culture.
Beyond hiring, the Grand Canyon is also reaching out to underrepresented communities, asking about their interests.
Not everyone enjoys the outdoors the same way. You know, someone might enjoy an 8-mile hike into the canyon, while someone else might enjoy, watching the wildlife, hanging out with their family. So we're taking all those things into consideration.
Ceja Cervantes also says the Park Service is using their best asset, people, by making sure a friendly face is there to answer questions.
When I go out to a trail and I see someone, I see a Hispanic family, I get really excited. And I'm like, hey, I can speak Spanish. If you guys need help, let me know.
But all these efforts could be in vain as the National Park Service gets ready to raise entrance fees. Kevin Dahl works with the National Parks Conservation Association.
There's no question about it. Access to the parks will be affected as the price goes up.
The price to see all this will increase only $5, not nearly as dramatic as prices proposed last year, which would have pushed the entrance fee to as high as $70 at some of the most popular parks during peak season.
Every dollar more that it takes to get to a park excludes some people.
The Interior Department is raising entrance fees to help fix the parks. Many have a growing list of projects that need to be done, to a total tab of more than $11 billion. At Yellowstone National Park, they need about $500 million in fixes. For the Great Smoky Mountains, they need more than $200 million, and the Grand Canyon needs more than $300 million.
At the heart of the issue is that Congress is responsible for funding the operations and maintenance of our national parks. Funding for parks has gone down, which is just incredible because visitation is at all times high.
But will an increase keep people from the parks?
This is part of the treasure of our country. That's why it's so important. And especially for our multicultural families, we need to make sure that no one is left behind and that everyone can access our parks.
Liz Archuleta works with Hecho, Hispanics enjoying camping, hunting, and the outdoors. Her group saw the original fee proposal as problematic. $5, she says, is more reasonable.
What we're saying is that we're reasonable about increasing the fees. Let's just don't increase them by over 100%.
Back with Lisa and Doug, the short trip was worth it. 3 days in each direction for just a few hours at one of the natural wonders of the world.
Some things you can't afford, but some things you can't not afford. And this right here, you can't not afford it.
For them, a view that can't be seen in pictures. The Park Service is also using fee-free days as a way to battle the cost of visiting national parks, and that is facing a cutback. In 2017, there were 10 days. This year, there are just 4. In addition to preserving natural lands, the National Park Service is also charged with studying the landscape and the animals that live there. So I packed my bags and went to Petrified Forest National Park and the Grand Canyon to see what they're doing beyond recreation.
The discovery part of it is really exciting.
Bit by bit,
I'm the first person to see this stuff in 200 million years.
Kathy Lash uncovers the past.
It hasn't seen the light of day since this animal died and was buried.
It's a chance to discover what was once unknown.
It tells us about what the environment was like and what animals lived around this time during the late Triassic, and what the environment was like and how it's changed.
225 million years ago, this now dry land was home to reptiles and dinosaurs. They're long gone, but if you look hard enough, you can still see shadows and fragments of their existence. That's where Lash comes in. She's what they call a fossil preparator. Her job is to clean that bone so the research can begin.
We want to preserve as much detail on that bone, so when our researchers look at it and when our paleontologists look at it, they have the detail that they need.
Bill Parker leads the Natural and Cultural Resources team at Petrified Forest, and he believes this is one of the best places to conduct this research because valuable artifacts lie within the park boundaries.
We get everything here with fossils from freshwater sharks to early dinosaurs. And some of the more interesting stuff for some people's point of view is the early dinosaur stuff.
This scientific work isn't only happening here. Parker says it's part of a mandate for all parks from the National Park Service.
One of our jobs is to promote scientific research, and we do this for 2 reasons. One, we're a natural laboratory to learn these things, and 2, it tells the park story.
At the Grand Canyon, they're also doing research, but here they're doing it on living animals like bats, looking into a deadly disease called white nose syndrome.
We have the ability to detect white nose before a lot of other parks or people because we have so many different species.
They've documented more than 20 species just within the Grand Canyon. Brandon Holton, a wildlife biologist at the park, says they're paying close attention to the bats as white nose syndrome spreads across the country.
It's caused by a fungus, and it can be spread both by migrating bats as well as people.
The disease was first found in 2006, so far spreading to nearly 36 states and can cause bats to starve.
White nose syndrome is one of the most devastating wildlife diseases that we've had in modern times.
So here at the park, their bat diversity works to their advantage. Holton says the Grand Canyon is one of the best places to track the movement of the disease.
We're actually building kind of a long-term bat monitoring project, essentially, to look at bats over multiple years to try to assess any kind of changes that are happening, whether it be in diversity, whether it be in any kind of activity patterns and such.
At Petrified Forest, Parker fears it's a race against time.
A lot of these fossils are going to be lost to erosion. Our job is to go out and keep that from happening and losing that scientific data.
So Lash continues scraping away layers from the past.
When I step away from my work and I look at what I've done, it kind of renews that excitement.
Excitement that could lead to something revealing, a new discovery about who or what was here before man. Still ahead on this special edition of Cronkite News, navigating through the challenges of starting a business can be as challenging as navigating through rapids.
You feel a cleansing, and that's how I feel. All my troubles and worries, they're not on that water, and that's the greatness of it all.
How one woman is tackling both.
When a story comes in the morning, we're out the door as fast as we can go.
But it's also great to spend more time in communities and produce projects.
From the borderlands to the cities, the reservations, and even the state capitol, we want to get to the heart of the matter.
When the lights come on in the studio, we know our hard work is about to pay off.
We love what we do here at Cronkite News.
We're proud to tell the stories of our state.
Now, more than ever, it's important to have a trusted news source, and that's Cronkite News.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. Join us each weekday at 5:30 and 10 as we bring you the top newsmakers who impact the state. We cover the stories in depth that shape and affect our local communities, and we take the time to ensure that all voices are equally heard. For more than 30 years, Arizona Horizon has been your voice and your source for what matters most, right here on Arizona PBS.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Human beings are a curious bunch.
What are we going to see when we get really close?
Oh my God, absolutely spectacular.
We are at a remarkable moment.
We're going farther than any exploration ever has.
Many of the businesses in national parks are run by private companies, and there's always a balancing act of preservation, good customer service, and honoring the traditions of the land. This balancing act recently played out on the Colorado River, where a new rafting company put oars in the water. Reporter Lillian Donahue hit the river with one woman who wasn't going to let a ban stop her from starting her own company.
The Grand Canyon is the backyard of the indigenous Wallapai Nation. For over a decade, the tribe didn't allow new rafting businesses to start on the reservation. But just a few years ago, that ban was lifted, allowing a determined Native entrepreneur to pursue her passion.
There be the name of the company, Grand Canyon 9.
Growing up on the Wallapai Native Reservation, Patricia Sespooch says she loved the Colorado River and dreamed about working on the water.
This is the only thing that I've ever wanted to do in my life.
And it's taken her 2 decades to do just that. She's just opened Grand Canyon 9 Rapids, her independent whitewater rafting business specializing in overnight trips in the southwest region of the Grand Canyon. It's been a labor of love, full of challenges along the way.
Not only do you have to abide by the national park rules and regulations out here, but within your own nation within a nation, which is Indian country, you have to operate by the tribal council's requests and demands.
Those demands came shortly after receiving her rafting permit in 1998, when the Wallapai Tribal Council enacted a moratorium a year later, barring her and any new rafting business from starting, while still allowing the tribe-funded rafting business to continue their operations. But Saspuch didn't give up, selling jewelry for years, saving up money for her own business.
You know, it's been a long journey. It really has, and I do get emotional about it because I'm here. That's the great thing.
Grand Canyon 9 Rapids is an independent endeavor, which means she gets no funding from the tribe, making family and guests crucial to the survival of the new company.
Supporting local business and getting an opportunity to learn about the land that we're on from people that have access to the innate knowledge of it. I think it's going to be a cool trip. Hopefully we get an opportunity to learn more about it.
Now, every single time Grand Canyon Rapids comes out here on the Colorado River, they spend about 1 to 2 days going over 53 miles. And in a business usually run by men, she stands out as the boss.
This is my first time experiencing a lady doing something like this.
You feel a cleansing, and that's how I feel. All my troubles and worries, they're not on that water, and that's the greatness of it all.
We reached out to the Wallapai Tribal Council to get their take on Saspuch's business. What they have told us is that they have no plans to invest in Grand Canyon 9 Rapids since they don't receive any profits from her company. Lillian Donahue, Cronkite News.
From preserving national lands to educating the public to opening up views for all, the national parks have a huge responsibility, and so do we as protectors of these public spaces. One thing I learned reporting on these stories is how diverse the national parks are, and that's after visiting just 3 of them in our state. To watch any of these stories again, we put them online for you. Just head to our website, cronkitenews.azpbs.org.